Hello and welcome to the Sabrina River Folk Podcast with me, Nicola Haasz. Tonight's guest is Ben Spencer from Gloucestershire Wildlife Trust. Ben is part of the Eelscapes project and he joins me tonight to tell us all about it. So, welcome to the podcast, Ben.
Thanks very much, Nick. Good to be here.
So if we could please, Ben, if you could just give us a little bit of your background, where you were born. Were you born and raised in Gloucestershire?
I wasn't. No. And I was thinking about this the other day and thinking about my first kind of connection to the River Severn. I grew up mostly in Berkshire. We used to go as a family to South Wales on regular visits to meet up with friends. And so we'd drive down the M4. And I can remember stopping at the service station and looking out over the River Severn and the bridge and being completely gobsmacked, to be honest. Just the scale of the river and its kind of strength and almost kind of mystery with the dark brown water and then the amazing engineering of the bridge. I can't remember the actual age that I was the first time I remember stopping, but I was probably, I don't know, six, seven, something like that. And completely blown away by it. Just very different scale to anything I'd ever experienced previously. Where I was growing up, it was kind of like heathlands, really, where I was living, and so there wasn't that much in the way of rivers, surface water. There were a few little ponds and lakes around the place, and that was about it. So I do remember thinking, "Whoa, this is an amazing, an amazing thing."
Yeah, I mean, I live near the Severn Bridges, and I completely understand what you're saying. They are still, every time I see them, really breathtaking to see and really amazing. Completely understand what you're saying there. We met a while ago. We were both at a talk at Gloucester Folk House that Julia Manning gave. She had an exhibition at the Folk House, and she gave a talk about eels and about her artwork. So she's involved with the Somerset Eel Recovery Project, and she does lots of artwork around the plight of the eels, and her art is really moving and really inspirational. And of course that we met that evening, and then you graciously agreed to come and be part of our event for Sacred Severn last weekend. But I'm going to record a separate podcast about that, so we won't go into that this evening. But I just wondered if this evening we can go much deeper into the Eelscapes project. And to start with, could you let us know a bit about how you became involved in it in the first place, please, Ben?
Yeah, absolutely. I think before I do, just to say, what a great event that Julia Manning evening was at the Folk. She was such a good speaker, and I just thought it was fantastic hearing about the kind of background science and research that she had done and how that had informed her artwork, but also the kind of like techniques that she was using with the artwork. So I'd come across her work previously, and it was fantastic to get to meet her and hear a bit more, and to meet yourself. In terms of my involvement with the Eelscapes project, I joined the project not last February, but the February before. So I guess that's getting closer to two years now. It was a bit of a career change for me, and prior to that, I'd been working at Oxford Brookes University I live in Stroud, so that was quite a long way to travel back and forth. And yeah, I got fed up with all the travel and decided that I wanted to work closer to home and to do something that would be a bit more kind of directly related to my interests, although the work I was doing previously was as well, but also to have that more local connection with the work that I was doing. Were two really important things when I joined the Eelscapes project. The project itself at that point had already been going for several months. So I joined an existing team at Gloucestershire Wildlife Trust, and very quickly got to start working with our partners. The main partners on the project are WWT at Slimbridge, who are the leaders of the project, and also the Environment Agency, with staff working out of their Tewkesbury office. So those are the main partners. Then we've got a whole lot of landowners and land managers, and the area that we're working in is basically between Tewkesbury and just south of Gloucester.
So, what we're talking about, for those that perhaps are listening and aren't familiar with the area, is we're talking around the area of Gloucestershire. The Severn comes down through Shropshire, down through Worcestershire, and the Severn Vale comes down, and we're talking about the area between the Cotswold Hills and on the opposite side, the Malverns and the Forest of Dean, and this is known as the Severn Vale. And the town of Tewkesbury is a lovely town, obviously with its abbey and with its lots of history there. It's also the place where the Shakespeare's Avon has its confluence with the River Severn, and it's obviously known for its flooding in that area. And then the Severn carries on down, so north of Gloucester, the city of Gloucester, down into the city and around the city itself. So why was this the area that was chosen for this project?
One of the things that came up in the Rights of Rivers event that you mentioned was about the kind of natural state of the river, and the fact that there's a kind of low flow channel, which most of us think of as being the river, but the river will also expand and contract over its floodplain, and that's something that's very much the case in the Severn Vale. Yeah, so in particular, we were looking at the Gloucestershire nature improvement areas. So that's some work that was done basically trying to do what it says, and across the county as a whole, identify those key places where there's a need and a potential for nature to improve, and one of those was the Severn Vale. So that's one of 4 nature improvement areas. The other ones being the Cotswold Scarp, Cotswold Valleys, and the Cotswold Water Park. So, yeah, really important zone, if you like, and that same area coming from Tewkesbury down to south of Gloucester, and that's set in flood zones 2 and 3. So that relates to what we were saying about the river expanding and contracting in that area.
So, just to clarify, Ben, these areas are well known to flood. Is the project looking at ways of preventing the flooding, or is it looking at ways of working with the flooding, please?
I think it's fair to say that it's working. We looked at the potential of preventing flooding, but with the sorts of interventions we were looking at, that wasn't something that that came through. So I think, yeah, working with the river and its natural connections to the floodplain and trying to enhance those is what we're about.
So, is working with the landowners part of the project?
Yes, I think we're working with 21 land managers now, so that's reduced a bit from the initial set that we started off with for various reasons, including the kind of suitability of the land for the project. But I think, yeah, there's a real interest in how land can best be managed, and farmers have got real challenges in this area in terms of the sorts of ways of farming that are going to be productive and provide them with a decent income. There's a recent report that came out around climate risk and vulnerability for Gloucestershire, and that was recognising the fact that there were going to be more extreme weather events, so increased winter rainfall and decreased summer rainfall, and more heat wave events each year. So that kind of goes back to what I was saying about the challenges of farming and for wildlife in the Severn Vale in terms of very wet in the winter, increasingly dry in the summer, and trying to smooth that out a bit. So that report, which just came out in November 2025, identified a short list of priority projects. And in terms of the natural environment section of the report, there were 2 projects, and one of those was about establishing floodplain habitats, including meadows, wetlands, wet woodlands in the Severn estuary. I think, yeah, we're kind of heading a bit further up into the Vale, but the same principles apply. And I thought it was really interesting with that report that the importance of wetlands, thriving wetlands, was really recognised. So the overall vision, just kind of like picking up on what we were saying previously, is about restoring, enhancing, connecting, and sustainably managing the naturally functioning and climate resilient floodplain in the Severn Vale. One of the things we haven't talked about is the name Eelscapes.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the eels. I was just going to get onto the eels themselves. So the European eel, of course, has got the absolutely brilliant name, Anguilla anguilla. Love that. So obviously, eels are the focal species of the project, and I believe the True Fox Sedge as well. Yeah, so why were the eels chosen as the sort of key species?
Well, yeah, Eelscapes because of the eel connection, and obviously culturally, historically, really important for Gloucestershire. Eels and elvers and elvering. But if you look at the numbers of eels which are arriving in Europe, that's fallen by over 95% in the last 40 years. And so that gives you a sense of just how endangered the eel is. We have to recognise, I mean, talking to people, they are often completely blown away by the life cycle of the European eel, and the fact that it spawns in the Sargasso Sea near Bermuda, and then the larvae drift up on the Gulf Stream towards Western Europe, where the larvae change first into glass eels and then to elvers or bootlace eels. Once they reach fresh water, then turn into the more mature form, I should say, the yellow eel, which would then be found in ponds and ditches around the River Severn before changing into the mature silver eel, which makes its way back all the way to the Sargasso Sea. So if you want to know more about the life cycle of the eel and the huge challenges of understanding that life cycle that have fascinated people, scientists, for thousands of years, going right back to Aristotle and beyond, I'd recommend there's a fantastic episode of the Infinite Monkey Cage, which just came out a couple of weeks ago, and they go into a lot of the details there. One of the things they say in that program is if you were designing an animal that was going to be subject to challenges related to climate change and other kind of human interventions, then the eel might be it, because it only reproduces once. It has a very long, it's very long-lived. 30 years, not uncommon, and more. And so it also has those whole range of different life stages that we talked about, and all of those require different things for it to thrive, different food sources, different conditions. So there are lots of things which can potentially have an impact on European eels. So things like changing ocean currents, parasites, overfishing, barriers to their movement, pollution and pollutants that can build up within them over the decades that they're alive, and also habitat loss. So obviously with our project we can't address all of those aspects, so we're just concentrating on the things that we can control. So that's around things like creating habitats, wetland creation, things like reed beds, ponds, ditches, lagoons, where they can find a place to thrive when they're in that phase of being a yellow eel. And we also want to make sure that they can get back into the river and back into the sea to make that super long journey all the way back to the Sargasso Sea.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier about the eels and elvers are part of the proud cultural heritage of Gloucestershire, and I feel that very keenly. So all my uncles were elverers, and my family going back for generations, and I grew up with things like the old elver eating competition that was held on the village green in Frampton-on-Severn, which is the village where my mum was born and where all my family are from. And elvering is was a way of life, and it was a way to supplement income for people who were struggling in rural areas, and there was the weighing station down at Epney, and most Framptonians and those from around sort of the Arlingham Peninsula and beyond would cook them. I remember my grandmother would, cook them in a frying pan with a bit of butter. I never developed a taste for them. I thought they were disgusting. But yeah, they are absolutely part of the rich cultural heritage of Gloucestershire. And it's been really shocking, to see what's been happening and the decline of eels over the decades, since I was a child even. Yeah, and I think there's been a really, huge focus on the eels in recent times, which is absolutely brilliant. I think we've all, fallen a little bit in love with them, and I've certainly become a little bit obsessed with them. So for people like myself, what specifically is being done, in the project for the eels?
I think important at this point to step back a bit and look at the funding that we've got for the project and how that works. So Eelscapes is part of a DEFRA, so government funded scheme called Landscape Recovery, which is looking to help the landscape recover for wildlife and for farming, but at that large scale. So it's really exciting, it's innovative, and quite progressive, thinking about that large scale, and that's why we're working with lots of different landowners. So this is funding that's designed for problems that can't be addressed through small scale or relatively small scale interventions just on one bit of land. So yeah, the landscape recovery funding had a first round, and we were part of that. So we were a pilot project, one of around 20 projects across the country, and we've been funded at the development phase to produce our plans, our proposals for what we want to do. We submitted all of those back in June. Huge amount of work, loads of work done in terms of doing surveys of habitats and species. We did social surveys that I was involved in. So spending a lot of time talking to people about their experience of visiting places like Olney Island, Tewkesbury Ham, Tewkesbury Nature Reserve. And yeah, getting all of that background information together and creating a series of interlinked plans that we submitted to DEFRA. They've reviewed all of those, and we had our first meeting in November with DEFRA, where we kind of went through our plans and our costings for those, and they came back with a series of questions for us, and we're now in the process of reviewing our proposals and working on the feedback that we've got from them to come up with some revised plans and proposals that will be going back to them end of January of next year. So yeah, has that answered your question, or have I gone off on a bit of a rambling detour there?
No, I love a rambling detour on this podcast, so you carry on. Yeah, so obviously the project is so big that you've got, it's very multifaceted, and you've got lots of different sort of factors to consider.
I mean, you mentioned in terms of the sorts of interventions that we were looking at, that's around habitat interventions and the sorts of things I spoke about previously, with increasing the amount of water that's available for eels and more generally for other species. So one of the things that happens with that area in the Vale is that it tends to be a bit of feast or famine, that either it will be very wet or it can get really dry. So we want to try and keep more water in the right places on the land for longer through the summer, so that there's those environments for wetland species to thrive. The other whole dimension to the project, which I haven't really talked about so far, is more on that cultural side, and the guidance from DEFRA in terms of the landscape recovery projects did recognise the importance of the cultural connections with the landscape and history, and the potential health and well-being benefits. So we put together some proposals around that for what we can do in terms of education initiatives, increasing access to key sites so that people get more in the way of inspiration, get deeper understanding of place and of wetlands in particular. So in my previous work at Oxford Brookes, I've worked more on planning and urban design side of things, and working with communities, looking at citizen engagement around improvements to towns and cities, and working from the grassroots up in terms of working with community groups to understand what their needs and opportunities were. So that's the angle that I've come from.
Yeah, well, I personally know how my well-being is improved by being by the River Severn, definitely. So that's great that it's actually, part of the considerations of the project. I think that's really important. Um, yeah, so in terms of implementing sort of any changes, will there be any changes to the weirs at Gloucester at all, or will you be putting any kind of fish passes or anything like that?
There's there's a there's an important consideration for our project, which is a bit of a technical thing related to the funding, but the funding was either available for, there was some specific landscape recovery of funding which was for rivers, and then there was some other funding which was available for species, and we decided to go with the species. So that's where the emphasis is on the eels and the true fox sedge. Um, but what we're not actually looking at, and this might sound slightly strange, is the main River Severn itself. So we're looking at the floodplain and the connection between the river and the floodplain. So we haven't been looking directly at things like weirs on the River Severn itself. It's more about how do eels get to and from the main river channel, and then what habitats are available for them in the floodplain. So yeah, sorry if that's a slightly slightly kind of dry answer, but that's where we're coming from. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand that you need to be diplomatic. So, are there any other species that are involved in eelscapes other than the eels and the true fox sedge? What about things like pine martens and beavers? Are any of those sort of part of the project?
um, pine martins uh, are another important project for Gloucestershire Wildlife Trust, and we've done a project reintroducing them in the Forest of Dean, but that's not part of Eelscapes. So the sorts of things that we're looking at would be amphibians, wading birds, waterfowl, those sorts of things that are more kind of wetland oriented. Um, the true fox sedge is only is restricted just to few locations in southern northeastern England. Um, and for years, it was confused with the false fox sedge. so, so yeah, I think it was only in the 1930s or so that people recognised that there were two different species, and telling the two species apart is actually really difficult. So it's understandable that they were confused for so long. But yeah, those are the sorts of species that we're looking at.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting thought that just came to me. Are there actually any reintroductions of species that are planned for eelscapes at all? Is there any species that have become extinct or not in the area anymore that you're reintroducing?
Yeah, interesting question about uh, how you support species. And what we are planning to do for the true fox sedge is to grow that. Um, we've done some seed harvesting um, with the appropriate licenses, and we're then going to grow that on at Slimbridge, and then plant that into suitable locations back in the Severn Vale to help it spread and thrive. But that's the only species that we're doing that kind of direct support, growing on, and so it's not the same as something like the Pine Martin project and that kind of reintroduction. I think I think with both the eels and the fox sedge, the true fox sedge, uh, the key point is that they are good indicators of general wetland health. So the sorts of things that we're doing that are going to help those two species is going to have that wider benefit to other species as well. So yeah, really important as indicator species, but that's not our sole focus.
Yeah, so in terms of all the surveys and everything that were done, Ben, how is pollution affecting the Severn Vale, and is it something that you're looking at with Eelscapes?
We have looked at water quality, and that's something that we're planning to continue looking at. And through the kind of education and citizen engagement side of things, we want to get more done in terms of water quality monitoring, certainly.
So something I ask all my guests on the show, Ben, is obviously now you've been living in Stroud for quite a long time and you've been working on this project. Do you think that you've developed a connection with the River Severn, or a fondness for the river at all?
So yeah, it took me more than a year before I saw my first live eel. And I then was, yeah, thrilled to get a call. Went down to Netheridge and saw some bootlace eels there, and managed to kind of like scoop them up and have them in my hands. But they're only sort of half a dozen. Oh, sorry, only about, yeah, half a dozen um, at that point. So yeah, I think there's a real kind of sadness as well, that something that was so abundant and so taken for granted is so absent now. Um, yeah, I think in terms of kind of my connections to River Severn, when I first moved to Gloucestershire in 2006, quite quickly went down to see the ball and was thrilled to see that. Um, when I was offered the job at Gloucestershire Wildlife Trust, um, I realised that it was going to be quite a big change for me, and so I did quite a bit of cycling. And living in Stroud, you basically got a choice of either going up one of many hills, or or you head west into the Severn Vale and the flatlands. So yeah, depends very much on mood uh, and energy levels as to where I go. But I have spent quite a lot of time cycling around Frampton and Arlingham and those areas, and yeah, spending time getting off my bike and appreciating the majesty of the River Severn. So yeah, when I got offered the job, I did get on my bike and cycled down to Arlingham and stood by the river, and kind of not exactly communed with the eels, but I just wanted to kind of like experience the environment and think about yeah, its importance. So that was yeah, something that really helped me make the decision.
Oh, that's really lovely. Um, so what's next for the project, Ben? Where are we at the moment, please?
Um, what should I say in terms of the project? Um, yeah, I think I said we're waiting to uh, kind of come back with a counter offer to DEFRA at the end of January. The timescale isn't yet confirmed for when we'll hear from DEFRA about their reactions to that offer, our proposal from us. So yeah, we'll be continuing to work up those plans. I don't know if it's appropriate to on this podcast. We've got an event coming up if people want to find out more about the Eelscapes project, there's a drop-in session that we're running at a drop-in session that we're running at Ashleworth Memorial Hall on Tuesday, the 27th of January. That's from 3 p.m. till 7 p.m. So do please come and see us. That's staff there from GWT, from Gloucestershire Wildlife Trust, and from the Environment Agency. So it'd be great to see you. We've run a couple of these events previously. We will have refreshments there. I got some of those the wrong colour, but I got some of those bootlace sweets that are kind of like long and thin, bit like Elvis. So we had some kids that got very interested in tucking into them. So not quite the traditional elver eating. And we're not running any kind of competition, but we will have some refreshments there, teas and coffees and soft drinks and things as well, and a chance to find out more about the project and chat to staff who've been involved. You can find out more about the project through our story map. The story map itself is great, but it's got a very unmemorable, hard to communicate URL. So the best thing to do is just to Google Eelscapes story map, and then that should pop up for you. And in that, you can have a look a bit more of the background to eels and True Fox Sedge, the area that we're working, and some really nice visualizations there about looking forward in 20 years' time, how a kind of like rural environment on the edge of the River Severn could change with sorts of interventions that we've been talking about, but also a kind of edge of urban environment. Because what we're keen for people to do particularly is to engage more with wetlands, but appreciate the wetlands that are close to where lots of people live. So Tewkesbury, with Tewkesbury Ham and Tewkesbury Nature Reserve, who've been our partners in developing the project, and Olney Island, particularly with Gloucester City Council, just incredibly close to the cathedral and the city centre, but not really known or appreciated very well by as many people as should do. I think it's one of my favourite places in Gloucestershire now. I just think it's fabulous. You can go to the parting which is literally the place where the river parts, and I haven't been there to see the boar come in, and you have to be a bit careful because it can kind of like go past you, and occasionally they have people who need to be rescued because they haven't appreciated that the water levels are coming up but behind them. But yeah, Olney Island's fantastic with those views through to the city and the cathedral, but also a real sense of being quite a wild kind of place. And I think there's an argument. People say that the city of Gloucester tends to turn its back a bit on the river, and that it's not like lots of towns and cities where the river flows right through the centre and you have bridges and everybody's very aware of it. In Gloucester, it kind of it's a bit tucked away, so not the easiest place to find Olney Island, but I'd say definitely try and make an effort to get down there, and that's part of the bigger project Wildlife Trust is working on with Gloucester City Council around Gloucester Nature Park, which is recognising that potential for the area between kind of from Elmore right the way up to Olney Island being a bit unloved and forgotten, and to engage more people with that as a fantastic green space, and obviously blue space as well, with the connection to the river itself.
And will the project be involved in any way with the big upcoming 200-year celebrations of Gloucester Docks that's happening in 2027 at all?
No, it's definitely on our radar, and something that we definitely want to connect to. once the funding's confirmed. Um, but I think no, I think um, whatever happens with the DEFRA negotiations, that the Eelscapes project will go forward in some sense, and certainly those kind of connections to the dock celebrations and the appreciation and developments of Olney Island and those connections to the river are, yeah, really, really important.
Many thanks to Ben Spencer for coming on the podcast. If you would like to find out more, please search Gloucestershire Wildlife Trust Eelscapes online.